Welcome to STEaPP. This is a mini video series of the Department of Science, Technology and Engineering in UCL. And the purpose of the video is to showcase how academic work ties into the world of policy making. It's also try to demonstrate why we teach and what we teach. Today, I'm very delighted to have Dr. Carla Washbourne, Associate Professor and the Program Lead of Climate, Innovation and Sustainability Policy. Good morning, Carla.
Good morning.
Well, in recent years, we see very severe weather changing in the globe. And I understand there have been some major development in the world of sustainability in many countries as well as the local level. Can you tell us a bit more about what are these major developments and what you think of them?
Yeah, so there have been a few developments actually just this year. So I think whilst lots of us probably know about the Paris Agreement around climate change, there have been many other things happening recently. So whilst countries are strengthening their climate commitments, this year there was also the agreement of something called the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This is an ambitious plan to support and restore global biodiversity, and that was approved by the Convention on Biological Diversity. And as you've said, closer to home, we're increasingly recognizing the importance of local action for sustainability. And in the UK, we see many councils declaring a climate emergency and taking action themselves and making pledges towards being net zero carbon, as we say. And there are other exciting things like local nature recovery strategies for biodiversity also being phased in the UK too.
Well, that seems to be a lot of positive developments, going on. And how do you think the academic community helps to support these efforts?
The academic community has been really helpful so far in generating lots of data and insights and knowledge that have been really helpful in shaping these frameworks. I think will continue to be very helpful in understanding actually how we monitor and achieve things like the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework to help, as I say, with the kind of implementation of these plans. And similarly, at that local level, I think there's lots of contribution that different people across research and academia can make, both to bringing new knowledge and new evidence to the topics, but also, as I say, helping to mobilize that knowledge and to make sure it reaches the people that it is most useful to.
Are we hopeful that will make a significant difference to the way we are?
I think we always have to be hopeful. I guess that's one of my things generally with working in this space, where there are a lot of negative stories and there are lots of places that you can look to where we haven't made progress. We haven't made the progress that we would want to. So I think hope is a big element of working in environment and sustainability. I am hopeful that there are still things that we can do and that we can make big efforts to really support these changes. But I think there are things that need to be done very, very rapidly to make quite fundamental shifts.
Yeah, I guess, we're all living in the world that very complex right now in terms of the environment that we are in.
Mhm.
But how does all this ongoing work tie into our teaching in the department?
Yeah, so it ties in very directly. So our MPA program that you've already spoken about, Alan, Climate Innovation and Sustainability Policy, is actually a new route for this year. So we haven't run this particular master's program before, and it's really been it's come about because of the recognition that there are many people who want to work in this space around climate and sustainability, looking at how we can innovate socially, technically, but particularly how we can be innovative in the way that we make policy, in the way that we make decisions to help really support these big shifts that we've already spoken about. So I think the program is really important because it covers a breadth of different topics. We look at lots of different aspects of how climate, sustainability, biodiversity loss, pollution, etc. are manifest in the world, what they mean and what they will mean into the future. As I say, really try to tie that to which ways can we work together, which ways can we bring many different people into the conversation, how can we best use technologies, and how can we, as I say, kind of help to shape policies that are really going to help us get towards more sustainable futures.
In your teaching, do we use any case study? Can you give us maybe a couple of examples that you've been using?
Yeah, we use a lot of different case studies. So we build on quite large case studies throughout the module. We do encourage everybody who's participating in the module, so all of the students, we also encourage to bring their own case studies that they're interested in, that they've experienced or that they are working on also. Some quick examples on the cases that we've looked at. So we've just started the first term of this master's program, and we've already visited the Barbican Centre in London and the area around the Barbican Centre to try to understand how we can build and how we can redevelop urban spaces more sustainably. So we've looked at sustainable construction, and we've been engaging with people working very directly on the development projects of the Barbican Centre into the future to understand the sorts of challenges that are faced in doing that sort of work. In the last session that we had, we were speaking about energy issues and energy challenges, particularly in developing evidence-based policy for energy solutions in countries across continental Africa. And in the new term, we're going to be looking at blue and green infrastructure. So we'll be dealing with lots of different case studies, trying to understand how green space and water are being used in innovative ways, particularly in cities, to try to help respond to climate and sustainability issues and to create more positive environments for people living within cities.
Well, this program come across to me, and not only our student will learn a great deal about the subject matter, it's also help to develop some of their skills. What would you think those skills will be?
I think this is really important, and we've actually done some work on this over the last few years to inform the programs that we're teaching across the department, and this program in particular. We've spoken to lots of people working in the policy space around sustainability, particularly sustainability of infrastructure, so water, waste, energy, transport, etc., to understand what they feel the key skills are within the sectors that they're working in. So we're really trying to tie the skills that we're developing and helping our students to develop in the program to these skills that we see people really needing in the real world. Some of these are broader skills to do with being able to communicate clearly and communicate very complex topics, communicate with different audiences, and be able to do that, as I say, kind of clearly and comprehensively. Some of it is to do with personal attributes, so particularly kind of professional values and personal values with working in the space of climate and sustainability. There is increasing need, of course, as we say, to kind of work between many different stakeholders across lots of different sectors, be it research, policy making, private sector, NGOs, and working directly with communities as well. So I think there are a lot of skills like that that we focus on, as well as the core skills of being able to effectively research, to be able to go to documents, databases, and understand what those are communicating and how you can use that evidence and bring that evidence together into written documents, into presentations, and into other formats that say sort of help to mobilize it out into the world most usefully.
In UCL, our teaching e-thought is about connected curriculum. So we're trying to feed in both from the research to teaching and teaching, to research. So how does the teaching relate, to our ongoing research in your domain?
Yeah, yes, it very, very closely relates. So yeah, what I think is wonderful is in this program, I'm able to bring in work that I'm currently doing in research and engage with the students on that, as are many of the other people who come into the module as guest speakers and contributors during the sessions that we run. So yeah, absolutely. I bring in live research that I'm doing around environmental policy issues. So a lot of the work that I do is looking at environmental policy, how that sort of operates from global to local scale. So sort of understanding how the policies that we make, perhaps at the level of a city, a nation, and kind of globally, internationally, align or don't align. I think this is really important in understanding actually how do we make progress on environmental challenges if those things are, you know, very different or are not in alignment. Like how do we align policies at different scales to be sort of mutually beneficial so that we achieve things that need to be achieved and that local communities really want to happen, but that we also have an eye to this kind of national and international level of where we need to aim.
So can you give us an example of what you're working on at the moment?
So one of the projects that I'm currently working on is around environmental narratives. So basically looking at the different sorts of stories that we tell. We know the importance of stories. This has been something which I think we appreciate day to day in our lives, how compelling different stories are and how memorable stories are to us, but proven through a lot of research as well that actually if stories can be really important in influencing the decisions that we make and the way that we see the world. So this work is trying to understand the different sorts of stories that we create in environmental policy at the level of a city, at national level, and in international levels, to see actually where they match up, where they're consistent, and perhaps where they are not, where they don't match up and they're inconsistent. I hope that this work can help to understand where those commonalities are, so where those things are reinforcing and we can make good progress, but also where the inconsistencies are and where things are not in agreement or things are perhaps even working against one another, to be able to highlight and then actually understand how we can reconcile those very different stories that we're telling or very different objectives that we perhaps have in environmental policy at those different scales.
I completely agree with you about the importance of story, because these days we read a lot of information, you know, from the internet or from the mainstream media, and it seems to me we want to believe what we hear without much of the evidence base. So I think, you know, that piece of work will really help us to inform what are the aspiration and what are the actual, you know, evidence of what being developed and how we can move forward. So that's really will give us, you know, a lot of fruitful thoughts. Well, I understand you are also greatly involved in the department research seminar. So can you give us a bit of heads up what we will be looking forward to?
I help to put on the seminars that we have within the department, and these are regular opportunities for us to share different kinds of ongoing research with our colleagues, as well as talking a little bit about how and why we do the work that we do. So the next installment of the research seminars departmentally will actually be around urban observatories. So these are kind of entities that exist within cities. They have lots of different forms. They've been created for lots of different reasons, but usually they're a sort of physical or virtual space in which a number of different people meet together, work together, and are working on generating knowledge about that city. There are other things that observatories do, but usually it's that generation of knowledge, trying to understand things about the city and then trying to convert that knowledge into useful things, whether it be reports, whether it be photos, whether it be other kinds of kind of documents or visualizations, to then influence decisions within the city. And the work that we've been doing, so it's myself and colleagues at the University of Melbourne, at the Gauteng City Region Observatory in Johannesburg, and with colleagues at UN Habitat, is trying to understand the power of these observatories, really, to be able to influence decision-making in cities generally. But I think from my own perspective, to understand what observatories can tell us about the environment of cities, what it can help us to understand about how we're making progress or not towards different aspects of sustainability within cities through that collection of data. and through the decision making that data has the power to influence. So I won't give away too much more, but yeah, that's the focus.
Well, really looking forward to seeing the works, in the seminar, as well as other outputs, from yourself, and your colleague. Now, talking about the department, as we all know, we are going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the start of STEaPP. But can you tell us, how did you actually start your scholarly journey?
Yeah, I think there's a few different places to start. I think I probably started my scholarly journey when I was about 1 year old, because I was always absolutely obsessed with natural history and just going out and doing things and finding things and looking at things in the environment. But my official scholarly journey, I think I actually studied natural sciences at Durham University in the UK. I focused on earth sciences and archaeology, and really took a sort of earth science and engineering route from that point. So my master's degree, my PhD, were really looking at earth sciences. I was very interested in how, I still am interested in how landscapes function. And I absolutely love the work that I did in that space. My PhD was looking at how different soils can capture and store carbon. So I was doing field work, I was doing lab work. But I realized throughout that project that lots of people I was speaking to, particularly when I was out doing my field work and just chatting with people who happened to be around, I was sort of struggling to communicate why I was doing what I was doing. And to give a bit of context, sometimes what I was doing was standing in the rain on a landfill site in Scunthorpe, digging a hole to collect some samples of soil. And I could understand actually why people thought that was a bit strange, or that there must be a really big motivation to doing that, because otherwise I wouldn't have been there. So that got me really involved actually in thinking about science communication and thinking about communicating science to particular audiences. So the policy area, which I work much more fundamentally in now, sort of came about because of that, because of this curiosity about developing my own communication, being able to communicate with and discuss with people the importance of doing different kinds of research. Yeah, sort of led me down that policy route.
That's very interesting. It's also showing, apart from your personal interest, there's still a lot of commitment to go into in order to achieve, what you are now. So, what would be your top tip for anyone who is interested in exploring policies in climate, innovation, and sustainability?
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. And I think a lot of people working in academia and research probably have these similarly odd stories of how we got to be where we are. um, my top tip for those interested in exploring policies in climate innovation and sustainability. So I think there are things that all of us can do. So I think there is a certain amount of being aware of what's happening and paying attention to current issues and current affairs as they develop. So I absolutely advocate for that and think it is incredibly helpful, even at the most basic level, to, as I say, be aware of those topics and do what we can personally and be involved in the aspects that we're most interested in. I think one of the challenges with something like climate and sustainability is it seems so huge, and it can be very discouraging from even wanting to get involved in the space, because, as I said before, there's a lot of bad news and it feels sometimes like an absolutely overwhelming issue. But I think that can be immobilizing, and it means that we just don't do anything because we feel overwhelmed. So I think being literate in the issues is important. As I say, kind of doing what we can and working with the areas of interest and influence that we do have. And I think it's important to say that, whilst I've talked about working with the UN, working with governments, working with academic institutions, also a lot of the work that we do is with communities and understanding actually how communities are developing blue and green space, for example. And that has huge elements of community use and community importance for people to actually be connected with one another, and to draw kind of social and other benefits from those spaces. But they do, in aggregate, when you develop many of these spaces, actually have positive impacts for biodiversity, for connecting spaces across the city, for water management, for shading, and for helping with microclimate issues, kind of urban heat island effects. So I think, yeah, top tips: get involved and do practical things where you can.
Thanks very much, Carla, for your insightful topic, and how we teach what we teach, and how your personal involvement can make a difference to the world that we're living in. You all enjoy, this episode of STEaPP Chat and learn more about what we do in the department. So until next time, I hope you will stay curious. See you next time.